Welcome to the Stream of Truth. I am Dr. Tassel Faith Shamebrook.
And I'm Sean Kelly.
And today we are talking about establishing vibratory equilibrium.
I like how you had to check the notes. So this, if you can't tell, this was like my title. I mean, it's an odd title, but basically I think we talk about like frequency, vibratory rates, like having a high vibration. And I think there's a bit of there's a cycling that happens, and I wanted to sort of talk about that and see your experience of it too. I've been curious about how you go through these things. I think we all do to some degree. Mm-hmm. And then I think some of us experience, I don't want to say deeper lows necessarily, because that sort of implies that like my experience might be harder than another's or something. It's not like that, but I think we just traverse them differently. And I think it's interesting to talk about some of those differences. And I think as well, I can offer hopefully we can both offer a little bit of insight on like what we can do to reestablish balance, and try to find a more graceful way of riding sort of the waves. I guess we're kind of like surfers riding waves, and sometimes we bite it and we fall in the water and all that. But trying to ride the wave with it and not be so wrapped up in what our experience is, and just move through it with a little more comfort, or a little bit more security, I guess.
Awesome. Where did you want to start in this?
I have no idea. I guess probably the best place to start is just what consciousness kind of looks like. If you were to look at it like mathematically, I guess, it looks like a sine wave, right? Like it's like this. And it has sort of differing peaks and valleys, I guess. Or what would they be called? A nadir and apex, maybe? Mm-hmm. Or anyway. Yep. So they consciousness oscillates up and down like a sine wave constantly. There's actually a formula that some mathematician made. I can't remember what they called it. They may have called it the formula of creation, or God's formula, or something like that. But basically, they use this formula to basically model what reality is. It's basically all this sine wave, unified sine wave of consciousness. And so in the sine wave, it's ups and downs, right? And basically, when we experience it, the ups and the downs, if you just go back to your own history, you can likely see that I had a period of good, then something happened, things happened, and I got upset about it, and then it went bad, and then I kind of got over that, and it went good again, and this kind of goes on, right? But what happens is when we go into the dips, that's when we tend to wound ourselves as well. So that wound that we make when we're in that dip, like, persists further. Like our history, we create that story, and it draws further out into the future. And it's what forms our anxieties. It's what forms our depression about the past. And it's what forms our judgment of the moment as well. So basically, if we can sort of step back a little bit when we're in the dip, basically we want to experience the dip, right? Or the drop in frequency when we do experience those, without traumatizing ourselves, basically, without wounding ourselves over it. Just because something bad has occurred in our environment, or to us, or with us, with our world, doesn't mean we have to be traumatized about it and create more fear and narratives based in fear. because that just perpetuates everything. And so as we're trying to sort of purify and maintain, the other thing is that our vibration or our consciousness, you call it score or calibration, is more like a baseline for where we're sort of how much light we're holding, I guess, without distorting it. So we're always having all of the light, but we basically discard lots of it. We distort a whole bunch of it. And the more that we're distorting it, like the more of a dip we start to go into. But the higher that our frequency is, the more we see, like the more potent everything is, like the more opportunity we have to get really invested in what's going on as well. Like basically, so the stories we held become much harder to observe the higher we raise our frequency, because we can see it and the truth of it and the truth of the illusion we've made so much more clearly. Like, oh my God, I've been doing this thing my whole life. Oh my God, we have these realizations, these epiphanies, or we could call them revelations. That's when we have our revelations. We've raised our consciousness frequency higher, and then we observe an older story from a new, more uplifted or evolved consciousness, and we go, holy cow, what is that? Why did I make that? And so, yeah, I guess I wanted to just, express how I understand what these dips and waves are. And so you can imagine, like, there's your baseline consciousness. It's more or less a flat line that slowly raises. Most people, on a logarithmic scale, it goes to 1,000. Power versus Force, Dr. Hawkins, if you guys are interested in reading more about this. It's a logarithmic scale from 1 to 1,000. Jesus Christ was at 1,000. Buddha's at 1,000. So basically, that's the sort of physical limit, I guess, as far as we understand, that the body here can hold. The human body or third density body can hold. And so what we're measuring with that number is not it's not the frequency of like the moment, or like, because we could basically be really scared or afraid, but our consciousness baseline calibrates really high. So we could still experience fear. We could still have things going on, catalyst, challenge, whatever. And what happens is, because we're up high, we can see more of it. We can dive really deep into it as well, because we see it all. And it becomes a balancing act, I think, of, how deep do we want to go into the story that we're observing? I'm starting to notice that I go very, very, very deep, because I think I have this idea that I have to do that in order to clear it all out, I guess. And I think I don't necessarily have to do it the way I've been doing it, which is sort of what inspired the idea for this video. Does that all make sense? Did I describe that okay? It's kind of hard. I should have probably got a visual aid for the graphs.
I wonder, could you flesh this out with maybe some details of your actual experience over the past few weeks, just to life?
Totally. So I won't go into all the details that like precipitated things, but more or less, I was having experiences of feeling judged, kind of recurring. I was perceiving it like others were judging me, which is interesting, because I often will say and teach that we judge ourselves, right? Like no one's, like, people can express judgment, right? But the only reason that it means anything to you is because you agree to some level, right? If you don't agree with, or have, if you haven't made an agreement to the judgment, then it doesn't register as it's just a thing someone says. And so you can imagine if a stranger comes up to you and says, you have an ugly car. You don't think your car's ugly. You don't care, right? But if you're really, really attached to your car and you're, for you, it's a status symbol and a important thing to you, and you're worried that some people might not like it, and someone says that, then you might be like, no, it's not. You're dumb. You don't know what good cars are. You're blah, blah, blah. Get all offended, right? But all that's happened is you've noticed that you're judging yourself, and that's why you care that the other person's pointing it out, right? And so they've done you a service because they've said, look, you judge yourself, and you're like, yeah, I do. But so even the reason I'm highlighting all that is because even though I'm teaching to not do this, we all can get confused. The stories don't like that we've already created around things don't require us to like rethink them for it to occur again or to come up again. And so we don't really have an opportunity prior to it arising to like assess it or anything. So you could think about thoughts that you have or emotions, like they don't really, you don't pick them, like they just show up, right? They show up because of our programming and like our conditioning and the stories we've told ourselves about ourselves, or the stories others have told us about ourselves that we've agreed to, that we've been like, oh, that must be true because my dad said it, or whatever it is, right? So that's a really important, I think, distinction, because I went through a lot of sort of wounding of myself for judging myself, knowing that I'm judging myself, and then judging myself about that too, right? Like, so it's a cycle of judgment, and it's totally unnecessary. And I went through a period of basically self-judgment that I thought was other people judging me. And whether they are judging me or not isn't super important. That's kind of that's the important part of it, is they may be judging me. It doesn't really matter what they're doing. All that really matters is how I feel about what I'm doing, right? And without their input, like pretend they didn't say anything. How do I feel about it? But then at the same time, we still want to balance that with receiving feedback and all that too, right? Like sometimes people have good points. So I'm not saying ignore people, but I kept experiencing that. And eventually, like, what ends up happening for me anyways, and I think probably a lot of people can relate to this, if you have sort of a problematic experience and then you keep having similar stuff kind of keeps coming, you can have it like build up, and then you just blow up in some way, right? And so for me, a blow up is more like a shutdown usually. Like I don't tend to get super whatever vocal. I don't tend to do that. I might get a little abrasive, but that's usually about as bad as I get now. I used to blow up and scream and freak out. Not scream, but, call people names and whatever, do that type of stuff. Because I thought that's how to stop them. If I yell at them and freak out, they'll stop, probably, right? So anyways, don't do that. But when I was experiencing this judgment or feeling judged and all that, it just kind of kept happening. And it got to a place, like I let it build. And what was happening was I wasn't allowing myself to feel my feelings, basically. I was like, oh, this is judgment. I don't need that. And just literally just rejecting it, not accepting it for what it was at the time, and allowing it to just naturally come in and look at it. And basically I was like, oh, no, judgment, no good. Get out of here. So because I kept rejecting it, that's what causes the emotions to build, right? So if we just allow it to flow, the way Tassel's always taught, and it was Tassel that taught me this, but if we just allow it to flow, then it doesn't have a chance to build. There's no, essentially when you're ignoring it, you're kind of allowing wounds to form is really what you're doing. And so that's what happened. And I just kept doing that because I'm spiritual. I'm a spiritual teacher and I know better than this and blah, blah. That type of mentality that I wasn't totally aware that I was doing that, but that's basically what I was thinking. Like I was thinking I'm past this. I'm not, I shouldn't be experiencing this. Therefore I reject it. Right. It wasn't a super conscious thing that I was doing. It was very instinctual, and I wasn't totally aware that I was doing it until reflection and all the introspection and whatever work, shadow work, basically, that I had to do to figure out what I was doing, what's going on with me. But it ended up with a period of weeks of just me being very down, very, very down. And so, it made me wonder a lot about why, right? why am I doing that to myself? Right? What am I trying to learn out of this? And how is this useful for other people? Right? Because that's really, I know that I'm personally, I know that I have gone through what I've gone through so that I can help other people that are going through similar things. And I think that's the case for a lot of us. And, I guess, I noticed that the equilibrium or the balanced, the pure balanced state of no wave at all is not a very likely place for us to sit in all the time. Unless, like I said to Tassel right before we went live, I said, normally when we're at that place, that means we're not being swayed by what's occurring, which means we're not really being offered lessons. So if we're in that stage, we're generally going to die soon. Because I mean, it's kind of, so I say that because you don't have to rush it. Right? I don't think you can rush it, but the faster you go, the quicker you'll die. I'm kidding, but I'm not really the human experience, the third density experience doesn't need to continue if there's no more catalyst, and the being will either stay for a bit to serve from that state, which is fairly typical, or they'll finish their lessons and leave, like Jesus. So the Jesus's final act to balance entirely finish his lessons here was to forgive his murderers that crucified him, right? And to forgive what's his name?
Pontius Pilate.
Sorry?
Pontius Pilate?
No. What? What's that name? I don't know that name.
Oh.
I was thinking of the guy that sold him out. Judas.
Oh, okay.
So basically
Pontius Pilate was the one who condemned Jesus to death.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. That name didn't ring a bell. I haven't studied any of it. So I don't know. But I do know that when he forgave Judas, forgave his people that were murdering him, that's when his lessons, that was sort of his final lesson, and then it was time to leave, right? I'm not saying that when you finish your lessons, you get crucified, of course, but what happens is when you're done your lessons, you don't have any learning left to do. And, your opportunity then just is, am I going to stay and serve as a vessel of the creator, or am I going to go on and ascend and move into fourth density? and take on a fourth density body and start to move into the next lessons. And lots of us choose to stay in for a bit. But anyways, the reason I'm saying this is because we have to anticipate the waves. The waves are a natural occurrence in the universe's expression in all densities. And in order for us to like navigate and, kind of be at peace while the waves are going, we have to like basically stop being afraid when we're in the low parts of the waves. That's the primary thing, is like, and the way that we get rid of that is through forgiveness. We basically have to forgive this state that seems to our human nature, like, seems not good, right? Like, this is not good. It can't be good. This can't be right. But it is right, and it is good. And we have to try to know that while we're in the state, which is hard. But I think that that's sort of the realization that I got to through all of this, that like, it wasn't that this state is actually a problem. What it was that I turned the state into a problem because of my conditioning, right? Like, because I was judging what I was experiencing. I was judging other people judging me. It was just judging all over the place. It was my perspective on this dip in frequency, or this dip in like feeling just crappy. And, the reason that I felt crappy is because I was deciding that things were not right. Things were wrong, right? So when things are wrong, and especially if we don't know how to fix the things that are wrong, like when people in my life that I love seem to be judging me, I don't know how to fix that, right? Like, I'm who I am, and if they judge, what am I supposed to do, right? So there's no fix there to be had. You can do your best, but someone who's judging you will continue to judge you until they release their own judgment and are on their own journey that way, right? So basically, I really noticed that when I felt others were judging me, I did to some level agree with them and have some of these beliefs about myself, that I'm not reliable, or that I'm not whatever it is. Just basically we have to assess whenever we feel judged by someone else. And it's not always judgment that causes this, I guess, but it is almost always fear that causes us to judge. Like, we judge generally because something is uncertain, or we're fearful of something. So that's why we don't like it, right? Because it's causing us to feel afraid. Generally. So the trick basically is to not judge the feelings, right? Let them come. And then also, because if we're withholding the feelings, holding them back, everything's going to build and get much more intense. And so I was holding this all back probably for months. It was slowly building, right? And then I hit a sort of breaking point and went into a funk for several weeks. Now I was still able to function. We still did this stream. I mean, but I have not been myself really for a few weeks, because I just felt like crap. I just felt lots of self-hatred as well, around, like, I thought I was doing really well, and then this happens, and I'm like, oh my God, I thought I was out of these types of stints of like a depressive type period. Like, I thought I was past this way. So, I guess that was my experience, and like what I saw from it. And I think that I just felt like this whole horrible sort of, that's the thing. I shouldn't even say that. It wasn't a horrible experience. It was totally necessary. And that's, I guess, the real trick is like recognizing the necessity of what you're going through, like realizing that this is all to like serve you. It really truly is as garbagey as it feels, right? Like as crappy as it feels. And I don't think I've ever been that low before. Like, I can't recall, like there were probably some times when I was a teenager, and then when I had my awakening, that night was, I don't think I was ever lower than that. But like it was, you know, it's been really hard, really, really hard. And I guess it's only, what I'm trying to say, I think, is just it's my perception of it that it's hard because I made it hard, right? I believed it to be hard, and created a difficult scenario.
So, for instance, if you were to do it over, what would you maybe do differently?
That's a great question. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I did a fairly good job of like being aware that it was a cycle, that it was impermanent. You know, this too shall pass. You know, I was aware of that. But what I'm hoping I've been able to do is notice, like, because my hardest thing, I don't know if I've talked about this on the stream, but I've talked about it with you about how one of the most challenging thing for me to accept is when another doesn't accept me. Mm-hmm. Right? If it's a stranger, it's fine. But if it's somebody I really care about and they're not accepting me, or if I feel like they're not accepting me, whether it's true or not, that's really my biggest struggle, I think, at least right now. And I had to realize that, I'm judging them for not accepting me because I'm judging myself in these areas that they don't seem to accept me. And the reason that they don't accept me in the areas, or the reason I perceive it, is because I don't actually accept myself in these areas. That's the whole reason that it even gets me, because I believe these things about myself to enough of a degree that I feel it when people are saying stuff. Literally, otherwise, I really do think that, you know, we're almost oblivious to the judgment. If we don't have the judgment in ourselves, we're oblivious to it. And you can think of times when somebody's tried to insult you and you didn't even know that that's what they're doing. Like, that's what's happened, is you're not judging yourself in the way they've tried to insult. So you're like, you don't even hear it. You're like, that's a weird thing to say. Like it.
So do you feel that through this experience, you were able to release a lot of self-judgment?
I think what I've noticed is that is really the root of it. That like, even though I knew that this is always sort of the root, self-judgment, fear, non-acceptance, I know that that's the root, but I was finally able to, like, more directly, I think, observe myself in it, like in the midst of it, and like know that that's what I'm doing in that moment. And so that really helped me, I think, to see it clearly. So it's not that the self-judgment's like gone, necessarily, but because I've seen what I've seen, and you'll find this in everything that you ever have epiphanies about or revelations about as we like awaken. When it happens again, you're building a new story, right? Like, you're like, I know what's happening here. Like, it's not so mysterious. It's not so foggy. I'm doing it again. Mm-hmm. And we can be a little hard on ourselves too when we're doing it again. And that's what I'm kind of trying to say, right? Is we'll do it again and again and again while the belief is there. But it's through doing it that we see the belief, which lets us let go of it. If we can't, So there are three things to become enlightened or fully realized as the divine self in a permanent way. There's only three steps. Know yourself, accept yourself, become the creator, or remember you're the creator, I would probably say. And so, but in order to know yourself, you have to see yourself, right? So to know your judgment, you have to see it. And then you have to accept it. If you don't accept it, then you're limiting yourself. You're saying this part of me is not divine. So if one part of you is not divine, then you are saying I am not divine. So you can't become the creator in a permanent or sort of very stable way. And I'm fairly stable with that perception, but I still wobble out of it. Like I've said a lot, but we have to know we have to know ourselves first, and everything we see is reflections of ourselves, right? So that's why we're seeing the judgment. You literally can say, if somebody judges you, you can say, thank you so much. They've done you a tremendous service, and their soul is a little bit cringing at it a little bit, like in some way. They're happy to provide the service, but they kind of probably would prefer to not do it in that way, right? Like most souls, there are some souls that get a certain kick out of it, I guess. But like it, because there are different personalities sort of in the higher realms of things too. So,
and can I ask you what really brought you out of this whole lower vibrational experience?
Basically, I think just like sort of really sitting in it, not trying to escape it through distraction. Like I wanted to just escape it. Like I wanted to just like get drunk or something. Or, I wanted to just go away, right? Like go to sleep forever, or like just, it's very uncomfortable, unsettling. Like, especially with like how long it was going on, I just felt like there's no, I don't know how to maintain this feeling. But it was primarily like, well, I was talking with you and I had an insight of something that I'm doing that I used to do from like a sort of, I saw it as a sort of survival thing. I would use my psychic or empathic intuitive capacity to read people, to be able to anticipate what they were intending with things, and that type of thing. And I think everyone does this to some degree. I just think I'm quite good at it. And so what happens is I started to rely on that, and I started to sort of really frame how I perceive things through this, like, what are they meaning? Like, what are they really trying to do? What are they like really trying to figure out other people a lot, and to really grasp what they're doing and what they mean and all that stuff. And in doing that, because I'm really good at it, I see the layers of fear or judgment or non-acceptance, resistance. I can see it quite clearly. And I had formed a story that is about me, right? Like that if I perceive that in them, and I could be wrong too, that's the other part of it. Of course, whenever we're guessing at what people are doing, we generally have only a slight glimpse. We don't know. So I'm aware of that, but I would notice these things, and then I'd be like, oh, they don't accept me, and it's likely around this area. And that's okay. I mean, that's okay. I'm used to it, right? Like, so that's kind of the narrative inside that I would, that's what people do. That's what they do. They judge. And so I would sort of, I've just accepted that people judge me, and it's fine. Now, what ended up happening is I started to become unable to be fine with it. it built up enough. I just wasn't fine. I wasn't fine with it. And it became this thing where my whole reality was like, just not, it wasn't what I thought things were. I started questioning everything about myself, about like even our relationship, which we've talked about a little bit, not our relationship so much, but like a lot of our business stuff and just lots of stuff. I was just like, I don't even know what's happening here. But it was talking about it with you that opened me up to it, to get it, to figure it out. But I couldn't talk to you about it until I had looked at it enough too. So like it was all the right time. Like I couldn't really have done it faster or anything. It was all the right. I'm still learning how to do it as well, like how to do it more effectively. And this was a really really deep one, especially because it was about survival for me, because I've been like physically assaulted and robbed and mugged and that type of thing a few times. So once that happens to someone, they develop a type of, I guess, PTSD, right? Where they're just wondering, like, are they going to attack me? Are they going to attack me? Like, I don't know who's going to attack me, right? Like that kind of is a bit of an undercurrent. It just forms the rest. And they get used to that like presumption that I just need to engage this world where like people might physically attack me randomly out of nowhere. Like that's how I have to walk around. So we start to anticipate activity. We start to anticipate, try to like read people, try to like, so we can feel safe. So we know when we're going to be attacked physically or emotionally. It's a similar response. And I was doing that. And because I was doing that, I was seeing a lot of like, and paying lots of attention to other people's intentions, motivations, and like kind of creating little stories around how they're framing me, which is basically entirely irrelevant and unnecessary. It's not a thing that I need to do. It doesn't actually help me to do any of that. It actually just complicates things. And so that's what kind of pulled me out of it. Was I was like, oh my God, I see exactly what I've been doing, and able to just like, I don't have to do that anymore. Like so now whenever someone says or does something, it's been happening today a little bit, like just a couple little things. I was sort of just like, oh, I can see that I wanted to go deep and think about it a bit, and and then basically overanalyze, and I didn't. So that's, I think, the way to do it is in the examples all change, of course, but we have to determine what it is. Like, what thing do we believe, or what activity do we believe we have to do, or thought process that we have to take, or like, what is it about what we believe about ourselves that is causing us to form these experiences that are fear and pain and all that? Because basically what I realized, and this was hard too, to even realize this, was that it was entirely unnecessary. Entirely. Like, it doesn't serve me in any way to investigate and wonder about what everyone's intentions. What does it matter? It doesn't matter. It makes no difference. We think it makes a difference until we realize that I am as I am, I do as I do. And if people have issues with me, that's their problem, really. Now, of course, like I said before, sometimes there's feedback that's helpful. So hear what people are saying, but what I'm saying is we don't have to dive all into it and like go, oh, where are they judging me? Where can I find why they don't like me? Right? We don't have to do that. And I didn't even realize that that's kind of what I was doing. I didn't see it like that. I just saw it as, I have this capacity to read people a bit. It seems to help me feel safe. Let's do it. Right. And I just would constantly do it, constantly, no matter what situation I'm in. Like, I'm knowing like what type of music they listen to, and just I don't know, just random, just all of it. I get a very good sense of like who they are once we talk for like a minute or two. Not any specifics, but just general things. And I can see where some distortions are and all these things. And so why am I doing that though? Right? Like, I wasn't trying to judge them. I wasn't trying to, but that's basically what I'm doing. I'm basically just trying to find areas that they are giving me misaligned energy.
So would we summarize this topic of establishing vibratory equilibrium by releasing judgment altogether?
Basically, yeah. Basically, yeah. Basically, that's it. We're done.
That's it. Done.
I feel bad that like I just talked basically that whole time. I thought we'd get into more of your stuff, but I know that you have to go. You have to do a long drive early in the morning, so we're taping this and stuff. Oh,
well, maybe. I'm sorry?
I said taping.
Yeah. Maybe I'll just add a little bit quickly because I
would love to hear your side, but I know also that you don't have a ton of time, and I'm sorry for just rambling, but I guess I had a lot to say about it. So
yeah. It was it was a journey for me to be on the other side of it as you were going through this.
Mm-hmm.
And my equilibrium journey was for me to remain in equilibrium while you were going through your process. And it was just really, it was a great initiation for me. And I always have this idea of like I want other people to be the rock for me. Like, I think we had a conversation. I was like, I want you to be my rock. And it's just interesting. Spirit just keeps bringing me situations where it's just always comes back. Tassel, you will be your rock, girlfriend. You will be your rock.
Yeah.
And so it's obviously something I'm really learning in this lifetime or really grounding into.
Yeah, I should say just really quickly that I'm really grateful for how you were pretty continually showing up pretty positively, and I was not always the easiest, I'm sure, to like deal with, because I was just miserable. Like I was just sad, right? Like, and that can be hard. So I'm really grateful for you being able to do that. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. And for me, it wasn't that you were sad that was difficult. It was that you were in a bit of a hermit stage.
Pulling away, right? Like shutting down. Yeah.
You just weren't around.
Right. Yeah.
And, at times I didn't really know what was going on, if you were upset with me so it was a bit of a mystery. But you did stay in touch with me and everything, which was really great. But what I think got further initiated into was maintaining my equilibrium no matter what is happening on the external. And it's funny because I recorded a video for the You Are Your Own Hero series about inner peace. It's called Your True Freedom, meaning inner peace. And I was literally recording it as you and I were texting. And it was kind of like a difficult text. And there was a lot of venting going on. And I was feeling kind of hurt. But that was going on my iPhone as I'm taping a video on how to maintain your inner peace. And so it's just very interesting. And so I'm happy to have gone through this journey with you because it helped me ground more into my own inner equilibrium, no matter what is going on externally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And I think too, like a lot of times we'll see this a little bit where like when when someone's really upset, the other person, kind of like a buoy or those floaty things, they're floating a buoy. Yeah, they're floating at the surface, and the other person's kind of starting to drown, right? Like, and they're reaching down, but it's the other person that's sinking that has to come up, right? Like, what we shouldn't do is join them down there, right? Like, we don't swim down to them and lower ourselves into the despair and all the pain. Instead, we stay where we're at. I think this is the best way, and I think this is what you're saying. We stay where we're at in our equilibrium, our balanced state as best we can. And if we can't, we can't, but we try, right? Do our best. What else are you going to do? And you just reach down and just wait for them to grab your hand, as patiently as you can, right?
I just kept trying to show up in love to you. Like,
yeah, you did really well.
I love you. Do you want to talk about anything? Can I help?
It was really interesting, I should say too, is that when we're in that state, at least for me, and I do think that this is fairly common, but when we're in that really low state, like, we can't really receive love so much. So even though you're saying all these really, really nice, loving things, they just wash over. Like, it's as if they're not really being said. It's, they're not believed in the moment, right? Like, they're just sort of discarded automatically, because the frequency that we're at is a frequency of fear and judgment and guilt and shame and stuff.
Yeah.
And love doesn't join us there, really. Right? We have to raise our frequency to then re-experience love. And the way we do that is by letting go of what pains we're in. Sometimes we let go of it through, like, doing the work that we were talking about, but other times we let go of it just by waiting it out. And so eventually we come out of it, and then we're like, oh, I know what love is again. Right. But so. And
I think, like, all we can ever do is just keep each one of us showing up the best we can in as much love as we can. And of course, starting with ourselves, like, showing up with love for ourselves. What do we need? How can I take care of myself? And then showing up with love for others. And love always wins.
Yeah.
Like,
it does.
You came out of it, and we reconnected, and
there's nowhere else to go. Like,
because we are love. The universe is love. So
what we're experiencing is love, but we're not seeing it in that moment. So we think it's not there, but it is. It's always there. We're always in love, surrounded by love.
Yeah.
It's so close and within us and what we are that we actually have trouble identifying that it's there, because it's so permeating everything in existence that we don't even see it.
So a few minutes ago, we were talking about establishing vibratory equilibrium as releasing judgment. And maybe, like, the bigger umbrella there is coming from love is maybe the best way to maintain our equilibrium. Is no matter what's coming in, no matter how other people are acting towards me, I'm going to stay in my heart. I'm going to approach everything with love. I'm going to feel all my feelings. I'm going to honor my hurt if that's there, but I'm living from my heart. That's, to me, how I stay in my equilibrium. I'm living from my heart, and my heart is open.
Yeah. Yeah. What happens to me, because other people might have this too, I stop caring about, like, what like, I don't care. Basically, I get so, for me, some people get like, really try to actively pull themselves out and like really active about it. It's almost as if I punish myself more than it is even necessary by basically not taking any effort to do that, right? To notice love or to try to come out of it. Like I'm trying to come out of it, but not, it's as if I think it's just because I'm supposed to be in it, for the time I'm in it, basically. But, you know, in my experience of it, I don't care. I stopped caring. So it doesn't matter to me. Like I'm like you had even said to me like, oh, well, I try to show up in love, and I'm just like, cool, whatever. Like it doesn't even like, there's no helping me. There's really no helping me when I'm in that state. There's all anyone can really do is try to be there for me if I want it.
Well,
you did an excellent job, but
thank you. It's interesting because you seemed to come out of it when we had like a pretty deep sharing, and you were just really sharing. And I know you had to go through everything in order to get to that place, but it seemed like talking it out in a safe environment seemed to help some of the insight and some of the shifting.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. Like when we're able to do that, what tends to happen, Jesus said, when two or more gather, I'm with you. What tends to happen is the other person tends to be a conduit for healing. Like, if they're able to sit and accept with non-judgment and love and stuff, then they're basically helping to heal. And what tends to happen is as we release it, they pull it in and then also release it, and sort of the distortion starts to fade away and insights start to come. And so it's totally like that's the closest thing you could say that someone helps you, is they just hear you with acceptance. But technically they're not doing anything. They're just not judging, basically. And they're just loving. They're just being their divine nature.
Loving presence.
Right. That's what they're doing. That's what, like, when a therapist is doing that, for example, and with their client and not judging. You know, I'm sure there are some therapists that sit there judging quietly. Right. But when a therapist is not doing that and is basically being authentic and openly accepting what's coming through and stuff like that, then they're sort of acting as the divine. They're a conduit for healing to occur. And it's through talking it out and like releasing it that we can have the insight, because the shadow starts to like lighten. We start to be able to see it a bit, and right. So you did help, and people can help. That's the best way to help, is to just hold your balance as best you can. Try not to let their sadness be a personal thing. Because they may say stuff from their state of hurt that is not really honoring the relationship well, or they've forgotten, right? Like they've forgotten in the moment, they've forgotten love, really. They've forgotten about it. So they're not really seeing things the way they normally would. They're not really themselves, you know? So if they go deep enough, right? So I'm in this case, I'm talking about fairly deep depressive type state. But that's what happens when anyone flips out or does anything reactive about anything. They've just forgotten themselves for a minute. They've acted a bit weird, and usually after, they're like, why did I do that? They feel guilty and stuff. We don't really have to do all that stuff. We can let go of what happened, while still realizing areas that we can improve in. We don't have to add the judgment to it as well. Of like, oh my God, I can't believe I made that mistake. I'm so dumb. Like, we don't have to say that. We could just say, oh, I see how I could do that better.
Absolutely.
And that concept is a really important one. But
beautiful.
So
non-judgment, love, keep your equilibrium as much as you can with your relationships and yourself. And beautiful.
We're out. That's it.
We're out. I have to
Drop
run.
the mic.
Thank you so much for joining us. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. And also, please consider joining our amazing Patreon community. We're going to have a twin flame support group within our Patreon community, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
So please check it out.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll do a little thing about what that is.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
something.
There'll be more fun.
We'll give you more information. We're still figuring out exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. More information coming.
So yeah, stay tuned for that.
Because I'll just say the twin flame journey can really knock you off your equilibrium. But it will help you find it in a deeper way than you ever could have imagined. So
yes. Yeah.
it ties into this topic perfectly.
It's a fire. Fire's hot. But
it can burn.
But it can
burn and heal.
There's a reason that they call like divinity sort of the sacred fire. It burns away, purifies, right? So
purifies.
And when a forest burns down, it grows back in better usually. So
exactly.
It's fire is a healing thing. That's sort of what I think the twin flame thing is healing and stuff. So but yeah, so we'll talk more about that. And thank you guys so much for watching. Appreciate you.
Yep. So much love to everybody. And equilibrium.
Yes. May you maintain your equilibrium.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.